Sorry, I had to record this from my from my television. The segment just started a couple minutes ago, but it's about Dak Prescott, and apparently Colin Cowherd believes that we should stop doubting Dak Prescott as just a quarterback in general. I guess because people have questions about his ability to play in big moments, his ability to play and not need as much. Like the biggest question surrounding Dak, and nobody's saying Dak is not a good quarterback, but the biggest question mark surrounding Dak Prescott is he needs too much to be successful. Too much. All right. Now, when Dak came into the NFL, he was a third round, fourth round pick. Nobody expected him to really do much of anything, and he beat Tony Romo out for the starting quarterback job. And he had a great first season, 13-3. That team looked like it was going to be a force going into the playoffs. And this is one of the most controversial things that I will forever believe. But Dak Prescott should not have won Rookie of the Year. It should have went to Ezekiel Elliott, because Ezekiel Elliott led the league in rushing that year as a rookie. And he should have been Rookie of the Year, but they gave it to Dak because it's the same reason why during the Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, they decided to pass the ball on the goal line instead of running it. And I believe this story is 100% true. The reason why is because of Marshawn Lynch's attitude. They wanted Russell Westbrook to be the reason why the Seattle Seahawks won that game. They did not want to run the ball with Marshawn Lynch because they felt it would be a huge image issue with the way that Marshawn Lynch conducts themselves during interviews, during press conferences, and stuff like that. So they wanted Russell Westbrook to be the hero, and if he would have completed that pass, he would have been the hero. Most likely, he would have been the Super Bowl MVP. All right, this is why a couple years ago they gave the Super Bowl MVP to Tom Brady, when I believe it should have went to James White. I thought that James White's play late in that game was the driving force for that team's comeback. He had 3 touchdowns, 2 in the fourth quarter and 1 in overtime to win the game. And I thought that he should have been the MVP of that Super Bowl. I thought that his play was undeniable. All right, but they have the issue. The NFL has an issue of propelling quarterbacks to the top of the mountain. And this is why there were people that are non-quarterbacks that have an issue with the MVP every single year, because it almost always goes to the quarterback. Very rarely you'll see a running back get the award, but if it doesn't go to the running back, it always goes to the quarterback. You never see a receiver get it. You never see a defensive player get it. And there have been some defensive players who could have been MVPs. I say J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald had a great year. There was a defensive lineman that had 20 sacks, and I mean, there's just plenty of people who can get the award. But every year it goes to a quarterback, because apparently quarterbacks are the faces of the NFL. And this is why people are starting to flock to Dak, because he's the quarterback. And a lot of people don't like or agree with the choices that Ezekiel Elliott makes, so that makes him an enemy. And, nobody else really gives a shit about other positions. They just care about propelling the quarterback. So the first 3 games of this season for the Dallas Cowboys were the Giants, the Redskins, and now the Miami Dolphins. And surprise, surprise, Dak Prescott has played well in the first 2 games. Played extremely well in the first 2 games. And now I'm estimating that he's going to have a monster day. Now, if he doesn't, it's going to be a huge question mark. But he should have a monster day in Miami. Now, I started this podcast on a Sportscaster, and I said during that it's not enough to just look at the numbers to determine whether or not somebody's playing well. You have to look at the teams they're playing against. You have to look at when they're playing these teams. Like playing years ago. Sorry, this is a screensaver. Years ago, New England playing Miami in New England playing Miami in like September, is different than them playing Miami in December. All right, playing Miami in Miami versus playing Miami in Foxborough. You see, like there's different. This is why we see New England lose to certain teams during certain points of the year, or we don't usually see New England play well until late in the season, because for the most part, Massachusetts up in that area is extremely cold. It's like snowing damn near all the time, and as a football player, because I've played football, so I know, like, you get used to certain weather, and playing out of your elements affects your game. And this is why sometimes shit like that needs to come into consideration. Sometimes it's not about just one team playing bad versus another team being on the money. It's sometimes the elements come into effect. Times of the year come into effect. Where you're playing comes into effect. And playing the Giants, the Redskins, and the Miami Dolphins for the first 3 games of the season does not propel Dak into MVP status. We need to see Dak play the Eagles. We need to see what they can do against the Rams, the Packers. We need to see what they can do against all these other teams, man. I mean, it's not enough to anoint this guy as the next great one over the first 3 games of a season where the first 3 teams you're playing most likely won't even make the playoffs, probably be in the top 10 drafting next year. I mean, it's not enough. And Miami is probably the worst team in, this year. So I'm expecting them to have a big day. But I'm going to start the video and let's hear what he has to say.
This week, I'm going big dog. Like last week I went heavy favorites, and I never do that. This week I'm going a lot of underdogs with just 1 or 2 little tiny exceptions. So Joy Taylor is joining me. Here we go on a Friday, Joy. This week has flown by.
It has. There's a lot going on. The big weekend.
Yeah, before I talk about that dreadful football game last night, I want to start with this. There's 2 quarterbacks in the NFL, and I think they're both going to win this week.
Look down at the bottom of the screen. Look down at the bottom. All right. It says his passer rating for this year, and it says who he's facing this week. Now, 142.9 over the course of one season, not a few games. Over the course of one season, that's elite level passing right there. I mean, 158 is a perfect passer rating. So 142 for a quarterback is incredible. Now, if it's one game, I wouldn't look too much into it. If it's over a couple of games, it's still nothing to really be excited about. But over the course of a season is incredible. This is over the first 2 games of the season where he played the New York Giants and the Washington Redskins. Sorry. Now, I know Washington is a better team than both New York and Miami, but they're still not a good team this year. A lot of question marks surrounding their roster. A lot of injuries plaguing their roster, and just not really a good team to face. Now, it's pretty much an easy contest at this point. But Miami is a joke. I don't think he'll win. I know he'll win that game. If he loses that game, but I'm gonna let him finish.
Jared Goff of the Rams and Dak Prescott. And I think it's funny. I'm reading some stories about, Dak Prescott this morning, and Amari's like, we work together. It's like certain foods work together. Like ketchup on a hamburger. We work together. And I thought, yes, they do obviously work very well together. And that was the moment for me when I bought into Dak completely. When they brought in Amari Cooper, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's finally got a grown-up at wide receiver. He's finally got a young receiver in his prime. This is not Zeke's team. This is Dak's team.
Bullshit. And this is exactly why Jerry Jones paid Zeke. Because Jerry Jones knows they need Zeke. And I'm pretty sure Jason Garrett knows they need Zeke. Dak needs Zeke. Alright? And he also needed Amari Cooper. He needed Amari Cooper. The guy who I thought was a disappointment in Oakland. I mean, because no matter how bad that team is, you should still be able to get your numbers. All right, you should still be able to play well. You should still have the ability to not disappear. I'm not saying that you're going to play at like a Calvin Johnson level or something like that, or an Antonio Brown level, but you should play well. And there were times where Amari Cooper, he just disappeared in Oakland. All right, so you need one guy to actually turn your game around. And last year, when Dak was complaining that none of his receivers were open and he was taking sacks and all this other stuff, the receivers, I believe Cole Beasley was one, he said, we're open. He's just not throwing it to us. That's what he said. Cole Beasley, who he's going to disrespect in a couple minutes. And Cole Beasley, in my opinion, was probably one of the best wide receivers on that team that just wasn't utilized at all. Because when we seen Cole Beasley at his best, dude is an X factor, man. Dude can pretty much change. It's kind of like the Julian Edelman effect, the Wes Welker effect, where, I mean, this dude was an incredible slot receiver, but they never used him. And the one time that they actually used him in bunches, he played extremely well, but they didn't use him now. I mean, they didn't use him last year, and they really didn't use him as of late. So he went to Buffalo, which is not a great situation for him. I mean, Buffalo's playing better, but I don't know. I got to see how Buffalo plays for the rest of the season. But, I mean, this dude has receivers. Now, granted, Terrence Williams is not the greatest receiver. Terrence Williams, I mean, this dude was like the Magic Man. Like, he would just disappear, and you won't even, like, I didn't even know he was still on the team, to be honest. I thought he got released last year. I'm talking about last year. I thought he got released, and my uncle, who's a Cowboys fan, told me, nah, he's still on the team. I was like, really? Like, I didn't hear anything about him, didn't see him. Terrence Williams is one of those players where he'll just disappear. All right? But Dak, man, he had receivers to throw to. He just didn't want to throw to him. Now, what Dak likes, and I noticed this, Dak likes big play receivers. He likes a Dez Bryant. He likes a Amari Cooper. I mean, if they had a chance to get Antonio Brown, he probably would have loved Antonio Brown. I mean, Dak needs security. Dak needs somebody he know he can get the ball to, and they're going to be good with it. I mean, I think it's a trust thing, and I think that's the reason why he didn't play as well with the receivers he had last year, was because I guess he didn't trust them enough. You know, that's why getting Jason Witten back this year was big for Dak, because he get a receiver that he can actually trust. But when you need so much to be successful, you're not that good. You're not as good as people are trying to make you out to be. Now look at Drew Brees in Miami. I mean, when you look, in New Orleans. I'm sorry, I still got Miami on the brain. When you got like Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith, Ted Ginn, Kobe Fleener, who's their tight end? Jared Cook, I believe, is their tight end. I mean, when you have players like that, like Michael Thomas was pretty much a nobody coming into New Orleans. Now he's an all-pro wide receiver. You see what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you don't need that. Julian Edelman was a quarterback coming into the league. Wes Welker was pretty much a glorified return man in Miami before he got to New England. Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, Lawrence Maroney, David Patton, Troy Brown, David Givens. I mean, I'm pretty sure people that hasn't watched football for a long time and paid attention don't know who the last few names that I named were. But they were Tom Brady's targets when he won 3 of the first 4 Super Bowls. 3 of his first 4, 3 or 4 Super Bowls, whatever. The way I said it was wrong. Sorry, but yeah, Dak's not that, man. Dak needs an offensive line. Dak needs a running back. Dak needs a wide receiver. Excuse the stuff on my table. I'm trying to hold the camera up, but he needs this stuff, and pretty soon, Colin's going to comment on the situation that Dak is in and how it's not as perfect as people believe it's perfect. Ask Josh Allen. Ask Josh Rosen. Ask some of the quarterbacks over the past 5 years who have went to some pretty questionable situations, and you ask them. Would you rather be in Dallas with that offensive line, with Ezekiel Elliott? I'm pretty sure all of them would say yes. It's a perfect situation. I don't care about Jerry Jones. You can say whatever you want about Jerry Jones, but Jerry Jones has a crew of guys around him that builds his teams up to compete at least. So, don't want to hear that.
And Amari's team. So, but it's funny, there's this idea that Dak has just had it perfect. Yep.
He has. You have the best offensive line in the league. Yeah, they suffered some injuries last year, but you still had one of the best guards in the league. I mean, you did miss Smith. You did not, you didn't have Smith. You didn't have Frederick because they were dealing with their issues. But you also replaced them with McGovern, who I think is a pretty decent offensive lineman. I believe he's a guard. You also had Lyle Collins, who was dealing with a lot of issues coming out of the draft. And y'all got him for fucking cheap. For the cheap. Like y'all got so many of y'all other players. For the cheap. And he's played well. Come on, man. Come on. Stop acting like that.
I mean, come on, the offensive line. Injuries on the O-line all last year. Zeke is amazing. And
even without Smith and Frederick, the Dallas offensive line is at least 10 to 15 ranked among the 32 teams in the NFL. With Frederick and with Smith, they're top 5, if not number 1.
Missed games due to suspensions. Their wide receiving core was kind of atrocious his first year. Cole Beasley overrated, and
Cole Beasley was not overrated. He was just underused.
Dez Bryant, sort of a needy, high maintenance, couldn't.
I said underused. That didn't even feel like a word. I'm gonna say underutilized. There you go.
Catch the ball at times or separate wide receiver, and Jason Witten was old. We also have
how old is Jason Witten? How old is Jason Witten looking now? I mean, dude looks pretty good out there for an old ass man who took a year off. I'm sorry.
Owner who holds weekly press conferences. You do realize this is not the easiest team to quarterback. It's the most popular team. Every game's a primetime game.
No team in the NFL is easy to play for. There are your issues with every single team. You think it's easy for Tom Brady to be the quarterback of that team? Knowing people expect you to win every single year. Knowing people expect you to be great every single year. And any small drop off, people starts to question you as a quarterback, your legacy and everything else. And I'm pretty sure Tom Brady's legacy means everything to him. But no team is easy to coach. I mean, quarterback shit. Sorry. No team is easy to quarterback. I mean, every team has its issues, man. This is the pros. All right, it's a professional league. It's not college. It's not high school. Without challenges, how else are you supposed to be great, man? Come on, bro.
The owner talks more than every other owner. Your running back's a star, but has had some judicial issues. And oh, by the way, Dak wasn't even getting elite coach.
Even when Zeke was going through his issues, you never saw it affect his ability on the field when he did play. Now, I could say the first 6 games of Dak's second year, or both of their second years. I mean, he missed 6 games for some bullshit, which was completely his fault. But that time that Dak didn't have Zeke, you noticed the difference. Dak's second year was rough. It was rough. It was not anything near what he was able to do his first year. And that's when the question started. And in his third year, didn't play as bad, but, didn't look too great either. And, now here we are.
It appears in his first 3 years. What?